Good morning to everyone. This is the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It is Wednesday, May 8th, and this is our business agenda. We will start with the roll call.
Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner McGowan,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner, excuse me,
Here.
Commissioner Oath, Commissioner Ray, Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 of 7 commissioners present.
Great. Good to see everybody. We start with commissioner comments, and I have a couple of items that I would like to inform the folks that are listening in. We've got 42 people so far. Number one, I just want to remind everybody that the commission last week agreed to hold a Rule 511 hearing on the Crestone Peak Lowry Ranch cap. That is docket 221-000-282. A Rule 511 hearing is a opportunity for the commissioners to allow folks within the area of the comprehensive area plan to provide public input. We will be listening to that public input at the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds, the main hall, on May 16th. That address is 25690 East Quincy Avenue in Aurora. The commissioners will receive in-person public comment at that time. If folks want to comment, we ask that they sign up in a sign-up sheet on our website by noon on the previous day, May 15th, 2024. Would note for everyone that childcare and Spanish language interpretation services will also be provided. Doors will open at 4. At 5, we will have welcome and introductions and remarks from ECMC Director Julie Murphy, as well as CDPHE Environment and Health Director Tricia Oath. Public comment begins at 5:15, and we'll run through the public comment. We ask that you can also submit written public comment, but this is an opportunity for everyone to provide oral public comment to commissioners. So again, that's Thursday, May 16th at the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds on the Lowry Ranch cap, and that is by Crestone Peak. So that's informational docket number 1. Informational docket number 2 for me as chair is we had stayed the cumulative impacts rulemaking pending the potential receipt of a new definition of cumulative impacts. I am going to report out on that next week, Wednesday, May 15th. We did, in fact, receive a new definition, and I'm going to report out on what that's going to look like in terms of restarting or reinitiating rulemaking around cumulative impacts. I also plan on putting together a slide deck to report out on a couple of legislation that impacts the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, HB 241346 around CCS and some other cleanup, and then HB 24229 around enforcement and around some additional authority for rulemaking, as well as around additional authority to address disproportionately impacted communities. So just kind of a heads up that I plan on providing a full readout on all that next Wednesday. It was a lengthy legislative session for everyone. I think it's over today. And once that's over, then it'll be a good opportunity to provide all of our stakeholders with an understanding of where we are and where we're going and next efforts. So those are the commissioner comments from me. Others with comments for the good of the cause? Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had 2 comments. One was before staff gives their update on the ECMC field inspection process today, I wanted to remind folks a blast from the past. A couple commissioners were not here. Well, maybe we were all here. You may recall the variance request from Karis that was around stormwater and some reclamation issues. And the commissioners asked at that time for a working group to get put together with West Slope operators to try to work through some issues around inspections and kind of why our staff was not seeing eye to eye with some of the operators and our inspection processes and how our our interpretation, etc. And since that time, I've been working with staff and some West Slope operators on communications and our processes. And as part of that work and us talking, our staff really started digging into some data about our inspections. And I think that the presentation you're going to see later on is really just some great work from our staff to look at our data and our inspection processes and try to figure out how we might be able to improve those, which I think will also lead to an improvement in how we work with operators and getting to a point of voluntary compliance and improving communications. So I hope that you all will appreciate the work that staff and the work group have put into this presentation that you're going to see. My second announcement is that the biochar work group met again this week. CSU is busy working on a I don't know what to call it, a draft copy of the potential beneficial use of biochar in oil and gas plugging activities. And that is due in June. And that should get posted to our site on June 3rd for folks who are interested in that work and what they're doing. That will go back to the work group for feedback, edits, comments, etc. And then that work will lead to the working group deciding whether or not to recommend that CSU drafts what a phase 2 pilot project could look like to actually using biochar, either in the cement plugs that are used or as a spacer in between the plugs. So I'm looking forward to that work and the feedback from the working group. There is a site posted on our site, the biochar working group, and you can see the videos and the work there if you're interested.
Awesome. Thank you for the update. Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to update everyone quickly to let them know that I've met a couple times now with representatives from Evergreen Natural Resources to discuss the financial assurance amendments that they are trying to work on. Not completely sure on dates yet, but they should be filing additional information based on some of the requests that commissioners had fairly soon here. So I think the conversations thus far have been productive, and I think we're all on the same page of additional information that the commissioners are looking for. So that information should be forthcoming.
Great. And that's just an informational update. We didn't reopen that file just now. We just are waiting to see what things develop, and appreciate Commissioner Cross for running lead on sort of tackling through that and bringing that back to us at the appropriate time. Commissioner Messner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of updates. We do have an upcoming Colorado Produced Water Consortium meeting this Friday. That meeting will be held at the Dayton Street Opportunity Center. It's one of the few in-person meetings that we've had an opportunity to hold, and so we're looking forward to that meeting. Also, the Colorado Produced Water Consortium has completed 2 of its deliverables that were part of HB 23-1242. The first deliverable was delivered on March 1st, 2024, which was initial guidance documents and case studies to promote best practices for in-field recycling and reuse of produced water. And then on May 1st, we delivered our initial produced water regulatory policy coordination report, which discusses ways that state and federal agencies can better coordinate their efforts around produced water to ultimately increase the amount of reuse and recycling occurring, as well as decrease the amount of fresh water that is being utilized in oil and gas activities. At Friday's meeting, we'll begin working on both deliverable 3 and 4 as part of that legislation. The first draft of deliverable 3, which is really an evaluation of current state of produced water infrastructure, will be presented at that meeting, and then the consortium will provide direction to staff regarding the fourth deliverable, which is the availability of produced water for reuse and recycling. In addition, that meeting is really going to focus on how to best engage communities and some of the efforts that we're doing around produced water and energy development, with presentations from Nikki Wells, who's the Environmental Justice Program Coordinator for Black Parents United Foundation, Teresa Staples, who is an expert in equity, diversity, and inclusion, is going to give a presentation on othering, belonging, breaking, and bridging. And then Rachel Magario, who is a professional in experienced design thinking, that's going to give a presentation on discovering invaluable insights hidden in plain view. So looking forward to that meeting. That is an in-person meeting. There's not going to be a virtual attendance available because of where that meeting is being held. However, we do encourage the public to participate in person should they be able to on May 10th. In addition, I just wanted to let folks know that I was able to attend the Garfield County Energy Advisory Committee meeting last week in Rifle and presented information on upcoming rulemakings and general update on activities happening at ECMC. So that is what I've been up to.
All right. Further commissioner comments? All right, seeing none, we move to consent agenda. Does anyone have questions on consent? Does anyone desire to make a motion regarding consent?
Motion to approve consent.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve consent. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We now move to the next item on our agenda, the staff update on ECMC's field inspection process. I believe we've got a presentation from Greg Duranlo and Mike Leonard. We welcome both of you to the panel.
Commissioners, good morning, Chair Robbins. I'm going to try and share my screen and then we'll get started. Can everyone see my presentation? Great.
Yes.
Well, again, good morning. My name is Greg Duranlo. I'm the Environmental Unit Manager here at ECMC, and with me is Mike Leonard, the Compliance Unit Manager. Today, we're here to talk, as Commissioner McGowan mentioned, about the location inspection process and some analysis that we've done over the last 18 months or so, and some modifications to the process we'll describe. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the incredible amount of work that Deputy Director Cuthbertson put into this project, and unfortunately, he's not with us here today to provide this presentation because he's on a boat in the Caribbean. So the objective of our presentation today is to show the results of a months-long audit of the efficacy of our existing location inspection process, where we did a deep dive into the data. It's important to note that the analysis that we did was not of the quality of work of our staff, nor of the on-the-ground response by operators. Neither of those things are implicated here. We're only looking at and talking about the processes. The definitions on the screen are important to our discussion today, and we'll use these acronyms throughout our presentation. And please forgive us if we get tongue-tied on these, and you'll see why. First, the FIR, or Field Inspection Report, is the official document of observations made by ECMC staff during our location inspection process. The Field Inspection Resolution Report, or FIRR, is required by rule to be submitted by operators describing their response to corrective actions, or CAs, identified on the FIR. Lastly, the current process allows for a factual review request to be submitted by operators in certain circumstances, requesting a review of the Field Inspection Report findings. FRRs are submitted via the FIRR and are reviewed by staff and supervisors. And I'd like to remind listeners at this time that the current process was established through a lean event that included staff and industry stakeholders. Today's discussion represents a look back after nearly a decade of implementation and an opportunity for process improvement. We believe, as Commissioner McGowan noted, that what we outline here today will make better use of both staff and operator resources and will result in improved compliance. Without going into too much detail today, we'll briefly summarize our audit findings and show you the modified process. We've already begun to roll this out. We've introduced it to staff. We've begun some updates on the forms processing side, and we'll discuss it further with operators at next week's operator meeting. But there are certainly more details remaining to be ironed out in the process. So what you see here is our current process. The short version is that every observation of non-compliance is documented as a corrective action, or CA, in a field inspection report. And every CA is supposed to be addressed by a field inspection resolution report that is reviewed by the inspector and assigned one of 4 statuses: approved, approved via an alternate means of inspection, or AMI, approved pending reinspection, or not approved. A 5th status is null, which is unclear as to its meaning, but at the very least, it means that no decision regarding the operator's response to the CA has officially been made. So some quick observations that we've made by identifying all non-compliance as a corrective action. There's no way to really assess priority when assigning, when an operator is assigning work crews or others to respond to a corrective action. All corrective actions are essentially the same priority. There's also no opportunity for ECMC to show the escalation of a non-compliance over time. Starts as a non-compliance, the next time we see it, or it starts as a corrective action, the next time we see it, it's a corrective action, and if we see it again, it's still a corrective action. So that leads us to looking at a deeper dive in the data. And so we reviewed 2022 field inspection data. And before we look at those numbers, I just want to again review the FIRR review statuses. From an audit perspective, 3 outcomes from the FIRR process result in a resolution of the process. And those are approved, approved by alternative means of inspection, or AMI, and not approved. And here we've lumped approved and approved by AMI into the first column of resolved, and not approved is the second column of resolved. The unresolved columns on the right include FIRRs where ECMC approved the FIRR pending reinspection, and the null value or no decision FIRRs. These are unresolved because approved pending reinspection is really just a do loop, and null, by definition, it means nothing. So there are 2 cardinal rules when it comes to efficient process design. Don't design something that can get stuck in a do loop, and don't allow the process to be left uncompleted. I think you can see where I'm going with this. So these data show all corrective actions for various observations of non-compliance in 2022 and how the corrective action process was completed. For example, if you look at housekeeping in the middle of the screen, you can see that nearly 2,500 CAs were issued, but only 483 had FIRRs that were approved, compared to 833 approved pending reinspection and almost 1,100 null. That trend carries to the totals at the bottom row, where you can see that the vast majority of corrective actions fall into this category of unresolved FIRR. In fact, there is no decision at all on nearly half of the FIRRs. And that's a real problem if half of the corrective actions issued are just not being addressed. However, when we did a deeper dive, what we found was that those null value FIRRs were largely not submitted. So whether work was done and not documented, or work was never completed, the end result is that the CA on the FIR is left unresolved. In short, 34% of the CAs broke the do loop rule, and 49% broke the process completion rule, which leaves us with pretty unsatisfactory results. So that's where we dug in to address that process. And now I'll turn it over to Mike to discuss improvements to the process.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Leonard, Compliance Unit Manager, as Greg said. So the mission, and we have the mission of minimizing impacts to public health, safety, welfare, and the environment by identifying issues in the field. And as Commissioner McGowan, mentioned before, the best outcome for all stakeholders really is voluntary compliance. Next slide, please, Greg. Uh-oh, it's blank. There it is. As you can see, the amended process does present itself as more extensive compared to that earlier slide that Greg showed you. But the key here is the administrative decision of substantive non-compliance. And forgive me of the word substantive, I will trip over it all day long. Next slide, please. So let's define substantive as something that, number one, a reasonably conscientious person would spend their budget to fix, and it's a very important and, I, as an inspector, am willing to adjust my inspection schedule to re-inspect when a corrective action tracker prompts me to do so. It's really important here to note that not every observation may rise to the level of corrective action, as Greg said before. Currently, a corrective action is a corrective action is a corrective action. But in other words, is the observation a current impact, or is it a potential impact, or is it really something that can be remedied just through a comment? And with that, maybe it's a comment the first time through, the second time through, it's a potential impact. And as you can see, it's a ladder effect. And as this process develops, we'll be working to define what situations may be considered substantive and what may just initially be observations. Next slide, please. There we go. Oh, too far. Okay. So fundamental to this process is our commitment to re-inspect when a corrective action is issued. That prevents that potential do loop of approved pending reinspection from the former process, and it also ensures that every corrective action is reviewed and resolved in a timely manner. So with that, if we determine that a corrective action is appropriate, we have to track it. Then when we're prompted by the tracker, the inspector may review the FIRR or other information supplied by the operator. And after that review, if the information warrants, the inspector, and possibly after consultation with their supervisor or other staff, may determine that a reinspection is necessary, or in some cases, we can resolve that corrective action through a desktop inspection, or possibly even rescind the corrective action. And if a reinspection is performed and the corrective action has not been completed, then the inspector might contact the operator for further action or possibly recommend that matter for enforcement. And just to finally here, we're going to have to make adjustments to the current field inspection the current field inspection report and the field inspection resolution report forms to help us in this process. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Great, thank you. I guess kind of an initial question is, can you contextualize this? You're talking about like operators missing the bar, not meeting something, in violation of something. If I'm just a layperson and I'm listening in, that seemed like there's a whole lot of violations, and I'm trying to figure out like the context of it. Do we have like 95% of operators always in violation of all of our rules? Do we have 5% of operators always in violation of all of our rules? Are the violations significant in terms of not protecting public health, safety, welfare? Are they not? I mean, if you just sort of look at that, it looks fearful.
So, Commissioner Robbins, I can take that. And this process really doesn't tell us that, but I can give you some insight on that from what I know from being in the compliance unit. About a little less than 30% currently of all inspections receive a corrective action. Okay. So that's 70% that everything is just observations and there's no corrective action. And when we use the word violation, we in the field don't use the word violation because that's what you all decide, whether it's a violation. We look at it as an alleged violation. But I'll give you an example, and we discussed this in the compliance unit this week. I think everybody's familiar with stormwater. It's a big topic for everybody. And let's say, for instance, an operator has a sediment basin, which is a trap that catches sediment as it runs off their location, and it keeps it from running farther. It keeps sand and gravel and everything from running off the location. Well, currently, if an inspector goes out and there's been a storm event and that sediment basin is maybe a quarter full, currently that's a corrective action because it's not, that BMP is not empty. Is that an impact? Probably not yet, right? So maybe that's not a corrective action. Maybe that's an observation. Maybe that's just a comment. You go out and it's half full. Well, is that an impact? Well, not yet. Is that a corrective action or an observation? That's kind of the borderline that we're going to have to work through in staff. If I go out there and it's completely full, that's a corrective action because the next storm event will cause it to overtop. And we have several, examples of things like that to where it, like Greg said, corrective action now is the observation. If it doesn't fit neatly within the rules, or if it doesn't quite fit, it's a corrective action. Whereas if we change this, it could become an observation. Does that help your question any?
Yeah, no, it does. It provides some context around some of these numbers. And so, appreciate the 30% result in corrective action, which implies 70% is not corrective action, and also appreciate the distinction that a corrective action is not necessarily a violation. If it's 50% full of stormwater, the pond thingy is doing what it's supposed to do, which is capturing stormwater and not allowing it to go off site. So that's a good thing, and I understand now the distinction between that and an observation. Mr. Duranlo?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that was one of the challenges that we faced in reviewing the data is, just doing a simple query, all corrective actions are essentially equal. And so there's no sort of, was that a pop can observed on location that needs to be picked up, or was that, a pile of E&P waste? It's sort of, they are almost weighed equally when everything is considered a corrective action. And so this allows us to address that nuance. The new process allows us to address that nuance by, essentially addressing those issues in observations.
So then even of the 30% inspections that result in corrective actions, not all corrective actions are equal.
Correct.
A pop can versus, waste on site are tremendously different things. And that also helps us provide context to the listening public and to our operators. So I really appreciate that dialogue. And Commissioner, sorry for jumping in right there without giving others a chance to jump in as well. But do others have questions? Well, you guys did a phenomenal job. of explaining a whole bunch of acronyms and things around corrective actions, et cetera. Keep at it. We appreciate the great work here from both of you and from your field inspection teams and the work they do, and from our operators that are responsive to the work that we do to make sure that we're holding folks accountable to the rules, et cetera.
Thank you for your time today, and we're excited to see this process roll out.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right. Y'all can take your ties off now. All right. We will move right along. We've got several dockets that we're taking up at the same time. These are variance requests from Beeman Oil and Gas. Let me rattle off the docket numbers for the record: 2211-00316, 2211-00317, 2211-00318, 2211-00319. Why don't we take 5 and get the applicant and witnesses up, and then we'll return at 9:36. All right, we are back on the variance requests that are before us from Beeman Oil and Gas. Do we have someone from Beeman with us?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We're having camera problems.
Yeah, I'm James Pate, the owner of Beeman Oil and Gas, and I have with me Lisa Lawton. She's my office operations. We have our field ops manager Kelly Galloway. Then,
I don't know if they can hear us.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, and we're here today requesting 4 ECMC Rule 502 variances regarding Rule 903. Today we'll be discussing wells located in Red Mesa Field in La Plata County, and that would be our Hubs 1, our Hubs 2, our Gladys 1, and our Gladys 2. And I'll turn the mic over to Lisa to discuss more in detail.
All right, Mr. Pate, just before we do that, let's get yourself and Ms. Lawton and Ms. Galloway all sworn in.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So although we can't see you, we're going to trust that you're going to raise your right hand when asked by Attorney General Davenport, and then you're going to be asked to swear to tell the truth. Mr. Davenport, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Witnesses, I'd ask you to each in turn raise your hand and then state your name and say that you swear to tell the truth. Please go ahead.
James S. Pate, I swear to tell the truth.
Lisa Lawton, I swear to tell the truth.
Kelly Galloway, I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pate, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, Lisa.
Okay, it's actually going to be Lisa presenting. So all 4 of our wells in that Red Mesa field have the exact same equipment on location. They're set up all exactly the same. So I was wondering if we can discuss all 4 wells at once, or do you want me to go docket by docket? Because each well has their own docket.
I mean, however you want to present your case, it's up to you.
Okay, that's what I'll do. Then I would prefer to go all at once and then go over their individual numbers. So on each location, there's one 15 horsepower electric pump jack. Then we have a scrubber that's approximately 3 foot by 7 inches. And then we have the Cimarron 24-inch ECD combustor with a rating of 99% efficiency. All of our produced oil is stored in tanks off location at 2 different sites. These 4 wells were operating under an approved sundry notice for venting and flaring when Jim purchased them in 2018. They've historically vented and flared. They never have been tied into any gathering system in the Red Mesa field. Right now, there's no existing infrastructure to ship the gas off of the location. The Red Mesa gathering system was shut down in 2016 based on an order from the State Oil and Gas Commission. The record will support that Beeman Oil and Gas has complied with Rule 903 regarding the need to vent or flare. There are no identified alternatives at this time. The requested variances align with the amended act that some flaring and venting are allowed under certain circumstances. The commission recognizes that the variances of this type are permitted. The volumes of gas being emitted post-combustion is de minimis and is unlikely to have any significant adverse impacts to public health, the safety, welfare, or of the environment and wildlife. So our Hubs 1 well has a monthly average production of 31.08 barrels of oil and about 53 MCF of gas. So the GOR is 1.729. After the combustor unit, the emissions approximately like 0.54 MC. The Hubs 2 is almost identical. The GOR on that one is 1.431 with emission of 0.43. The Gladys one is a little bit lower. It's 0.746 on the GOR, and the GOR of the Gladys 2 is 0.696. So they're pretty minimal. They're not at that 15,000 threshold that you guys look at. Right now, we use power from the La Plata Electric Association to power the our pump jack. The amount of gas that we're producing is not enough to run that an Ajax pump jack and keep the well running. All 4 of the wells need a steady pressure on the well casing to keep it pumping. Shut the gas off on the backside, the well will pump for approximately 2 days before it shuts itself down. And in our search for other uses for our produced gas, we spoke to Tradability, a Bitcoin mining company, regarding that process. We have numerous wells in Moffat County and Routt County, along with these 4 that have no access to a gathering system for the gas. So Bitcoin mining seemed to be a good path for us to pursue. The representative from
Ms. Lawton, you just hit mute.
I'm sorry about that. It did it on its own. Did you hear me about the tradability and the Bitcoin mining?
I think you should probably cover that once
No.
again, please.
Okay, so in our search for other uses for our produced gas, we spoke to Tradability, a Bitcoin mining company, regarding what that process is like. We have numerous wells in Moffat and Routt counties, along with these 4 that have no access to a gathering system. So we thought that would be a good path to pursue. The representative from Tradability informed us that none of our wells produce enough gas for their mining. Beeman's operation manager, Kelly Galloway, has been in constant contact with Williford Resources, LLC's operation manager in the Red Mesa field regarding their wells and what they have been working on for the gas usage. Kelly was informed about La Plata Electric not being able to take any more power for a couple years due to some contractual restraints. He was told there may be a possibility within the next few years if La Plata Electric can change some of their contracts. There is currently some litigation regarding the contractual purchasing powers for outside power sources for them right now. There are also numerous royalty owners that rely on this well being produced as part of their income. I have submitted 2 letters as exhibits from 2 royalty interest owners regarding that and their hardships that they're dealing with right now. It has already created an undue hardship for the past 2 years for them. La Plata County has lost their tax revenue with their wells being shut in. We, Beeman Oil and Gas, have suffered due to lack of sales for the last 2 years. The transportation companies in that area that haul our oil for us have lost revenue. I think that's pretty much it on all of these. I know there's some issues in your recommendation, the director's recommendation regarding a gas capture plan. All of those concerns, our items that are missing on the applications will be taken care of upon an approval of a variance. We believe there's no net adverse impact with the minute amounts of emissions after our combustion process takes place. At this time, we're requesting a 3-year variance in hopes that by that time, we will be able to sell some power back to La Plata Electric Association. And that concludes pretty much what we have.
All right, commissioners, the panel that we cannot see but that we can hear is available for questions. Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a number of questions, just so I better understand the application, as some of it is just a little gray for me. So I think I heard you say that these wells have never been connected to a gathering system, and so it was not impacted by the Red Mesa gathering system closing in 2016 because it was never collected. Is that correct?
That is correct. In 2014, they, the prior owner applied for a variance to vent and flare in 2014.
Okay. And are you aware of any regulations at the local government level, specifically La Plata County, that that would regulate emissions from oil and gas activities or flaring activities from oil and gas activities that might apply to this?
We are not directly, we don't directly know about La Plata County, but we have hired Spirit Environmental, and they are working with us at this time to make sure we have all the applicable permits for the EPA and the Colorado Department of Public Health. They're going through all of our paperwork to make sure everything will be in compliance with everybody.
Okay. And then I guess talk to me a little bit about the volume of gas. And this is the first time that I'm hearing that this volume of gas would not be able to power any on-site generators in order to be able to beneficially use that gas, whether it's for powering the pump jack or for other uses. I think that we've heard from other operators that this volume of gas is does enable the functioning of generators for on-site use. And I guess my question is if ultimately your goal is to generate electricity and be able to sell it to the local co-op, that would require having enough gas to be able to generate electricity. And so I'm trying to understand if it can't beneficially be used on site to generate electricity for on-site uses, how it would be able to be used to generate electricity to tie into the local co-op.
Let me have Kelly Galloway. He's the operations manager. He can explain it better.
So down there on those wells, if you put pressure on the backside, too much pressure on the wells itself, they will not produce at all. They will not produce the oil that we need, or that can be produced. It just locks it up and pushes it back in formation. With the wells being combusted or in the flowing of the gases, it doesn't produce enough to even put an Ajax unit on it and let it run well enough. We were just in the process of trying to get a generator to make enough, to have a generator process enough energy just to run the unit itself, and it's not, we can't find a generator that's got enough power watts to be able to run the unit. So I don't know for sure if it would be at this time the generator would work or not. Hopefully we just can't keep the gas pushed on the casing as well as using it on a Ajax unit. Even now, we just don't think there's enough gas there to find out. Just hasn't been. It just barely keeps just enough gas just to keep a pilot light running.
So the second part of that question is, if there's not enough gas to
Right.
electricity on site, is how does tying it into the local,
Well, actually, you're
grid.
correct. Like, it wouldn't probably tie into it later or anything. But we are been trying to investigate a better way of using it so we can use it. I mean, if we can make money on it, we're going to try it. And I'd just maybe find the right generator. But yeah, I agree.
Okay. The final question, and one that was contemplated when we developed these rules, is are you currently paying royalty to your mineral owners on this natural gas or not?
No, the mineral owners are getting the sold product off, royalties off of the oil only.
Okay. Those are the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Further questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you. I think I heard you talk a little bit about having some discussions with potential Bitcoin operators, but I understand that the application didn't really say much about the company's approach to looking for beneficial uses for the gas. And I think I understood some of what was just spoken by the team about there being minimal levels of gas. To be honest, I was a little vague on my understanding as to how, again, I don't, not sure I felt Commissioner Messner's question was answered as to how the gas can't be used on site beneficially in any way, but could potentially be beneficial to an addition to the local co-op. So I still have questions there, but can you talk a little bit about what efforts you've made to look for beneficial uses for the gas?
Yes, we can, and that will also be addressed in the Form 4 I submit after this with our gas plan, per the director's recommendations. We have, like I've said, we talked to the Bitcoin miner about what's needed to do that, and was pretty much told we just don't have enough gas. Even on our higher producing gas wells in Moffett County and Routt County, we don't have enough gas for them to do that for them. And then we have reached out to Williford and asked what their solutions have been, if they've looked at other different things, because they're in the exact same situation we are with all their wells. I know they have quite a few more than we do. And that's when they had the conversation with Kelly regarding all their discussions with La Plata Energy. I've reached out to La Plata Energy 3 different times and have not received a call back from Dan Harms or any of the other field engineers at this time. And like Kelly said about the gas just having to stay at a steady rate on that backside casing, you know, it's going to be a gamble whether we can feed La Plata County or La Plata Electric any power back or not. That's going to be something we have to do in the field, just you know, on a trial basis, and see what we can do based on if a generator we can find that would work with our system. But that wouldn't tell us and changing out all the pump jacks. We'd have to put out 4 new pump jacks on to each well. You know, each well would get their own new pump jack. So it's a gas powered one versus an electric one. You know, I still investigate things all the time. I watch a lot of your guys's YouTubes to see what the other operators have been doing and what they're looking into. It's you know, we're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place right now with La Plata Energy not taking any more, and even us, you know, giving us the chance to try at this time to be able to feed their system.
Thanks. A follow-up to that comment there, you mentioned having to put 4 new pump jacks that would be gas powered instead of electric. Is that the only thing that's keeping you from being able to use the produced gas on site, is that they're electric versus gas powered currently?
Well, that and that we are probably 80% sure that we won't have enough gas to keep the steady pressure on the casing and supply the gas to run the pump jack to keep the well pumping. That's one of our biggest concerns right now, because right now, if we turn the gas off on the backside, it doesn't balance itself out and it shuts us down.
Thanks. Can you clarify that just a little bit? Turning the gas off on the backside, what you mean by that?
Excuse me, what you mean by that? If we open up the casing and use all the gas that's coming out of the casing after the production and all that stuff, just to run the pump jack, we don't believe that there's going to be enough gas. I really don't believe so myself, that there's going to be enough gas produced through the casing to run a pump jack consistently. It'll probably just keep dying. It'll just putter out. There's just not enough gas for that pump jack. From what we have learned on other situations and other wells and how much gas it requires, these just don't they don't produce enough gas.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's helpful. Switching to my final question, I think I heard some mentions of you don't believe that there's any negative impact for venting and flaring after combustion to public health, safety, welfare, and the environment and wildlife resources. I heard you make that statement, but can you provide any supporting information there that helps substantiate that statement?
Well, I stated that we don't believe there's any adverse impact to the environment or public safety because of the de minimis amounts of emissions after the combustion. Based on everybody else, all the other fields that we've looked at and all the different stuff I've been doing up in Moffat County and Routt County on gas capture plans, and all my investigating and research, I just, our 0.43 MCF pretty much after a combustion will not do any adverse impacts to the environment. And a flared gas emission is better than a vented gas emission into the environment.
Thank you. So if I heard you properly, I'm hearing that there's a total of 0.43 MCF emissions for all wells after combustion.
That's on one well. So the Hubs 1 has 0.54 after combustion. The Hubs 2 has 0.43 after combustion. The Gladys is 0.43. And the Gladys 2 is 0.40 after combustion.
Thank you. And can you clarify that that's over what period of time?
That's a monthly average. I used your guys' formulas on the ECMC website to figure the GOR.
Great, thank you. No further questions from me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Messner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm getting a little confused on the volume of gas here because in a presentation that you provided to the commission, it indicates that each well produces approximately 2 to 4 MCF of gas per day. You're indicating, at least in testimony right now, if I'm understanding correctly, that it is less than 1 MCF today per day. Is that right?
No, that is after combustion is those 0.43, 0.50. That's after combustion, not actual produced.
Okay, so but the amount of gas produced per day per well is somewhere between 2 to 4 MCF. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell me if you've had any conversations with CDPHE about getting a permit to flare and what you think that will look like? And then how this will tie into, do you have greenhouse gas goals as part of the intensity role over at CDPHE, and how would that fit into the intensity targets?
Spirit Environmental, I've been dealing with Andrew at Spirit Environmental. He has sent me his recommendations of what will be needed for these specific type of flaring combustion units, permitting for CDHP and the EPA. He's in the process of applying for any permits that are needed for either or, and he will help me work up the greenhouse, all of the stuff that we need for the Department of Public Health at this time. He helped us with when we purchased the Southwest Energy wells up here in Moffat and Routt County. He helped us tremendously with transferring all of our permits over from Schwinn over to Beeman Oil and Gas, and they've been great to work with. So he's been working on this for over a month for us now on this project alone for La Plata County. So
okay, are you all going to be coming back to us with a similar request for your wells at Moffat and Routt? I think I'm hearing from you that they're in a similar situation.
They are in a similar situation. I have submitted complete gas capture plans for the majority of the ones we have up here in the northwest corner, and we have a conditional approval on one. We are running that well right now under our conditions that were granted to us. for testing purposes. I'm still waiting to hear on the other gas capture plans. They have come back with some questions. I've answered those questions, and they are still in review at this time. We are hoping we can run all the wells in Northwest Colorado under our gas capture plans. We have to add a couple pieces of equipment on some of the locations. I would hope we do not have to apply for a variance on any of these wells up here. I'm hoping we can make it work with the gas capture plan, because these are bigger producers up here. We sell more oil out of them, but they are bigger gas producers also. And they're and up here, the only infrastructure in the area is Excel Energy, and it is all a clean gas. It is not, nobody's allowed to tap into those lines for distribution at all.
Okay, thanks. I think what I'm trying to figure out is what things, so if we grant the variance for 3 years, I'm not sure things are going to look any different in 3 years. And so I'm trying to figure out whether or not we're really granting you a permanent variance, or whether or not you think something is going to change or reveal itself so that you don't have to continually flare, which was an important discussion as part of the mission change rulemaking, was to ensure that we weren't continuously flaring, even if it was de minimis. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about whether or not this really is a request for something that's more permanent versus 3 years.
No, we can't, obviously, we as a company can't control the economy or, contractual obligations that La Plata Electric has, or what our well is producing. Over the next 3 years, we would like to work on some different options and see if we can find a generator that will work with us to help power our unit versus pulling the power off of the grid at this, and I think it's just gonna be trial by error for the next couple of years for us to try some different things and see what the wells are capable of doing and handling, and see where we're at in a 2 years timeframe, and look and see if we have any options, and talk to La Plata Electric and see if they have any ideas on what they can do to help us out in that situation. It's hard to foresee the future and what the situation will be with the wells in a couple of years.
Thank you.
Further questions for the panel? All right, seeing no further questions, we move into the deliberation phase. Anyone care to initiate deliberations? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll start. This is a difficult one for me, and certainly could use more information on a number of these points. As I consider the variance requirements under Rule 502, the first one being that there's been a good faith effort made or that an operator is unable to comply. I think there's a demonstration that there is no existing infrastructure, and it does present a very difficult situation for the operator with these amounts of gas to find an opportunity to comply with something other than combustion. Requirement 2, that it does not violate the basic intent of the act. I feel like the statement was made on that point during the discussion today, but the supporting information was relatively anemic on that point. So that's a tough point for me based on the application and the discussion today. Necessary to avoid hardship. We did get some late breaking letters demonstrating that the hardships are economic as far as I can tell. No net adverse impact to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, wildlife resources. I think the figures came out in the discussion that there is a minute amount of emissions after combustion, somewhere around 0.5 MCF monthly. And the last requirement for 502, that there would be reasonable COAs to avoid, minimize, and mitigate adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. And we didn't talk much about those today, but they can be found in the director's recommendation. Again, I think this was a very brief presentation. I know that we've been working on this, that our staff's been working on this for quite some time. I do have some concerns about the time period being requested here, a 3-year variance. I think that in the end, an annual checkup at the very least, if we do move forward with an approval on this, would be required in order to understand what progress is being made on all of the points that we've talked about today, particularly potential to move the gas into a beneficial use of some sort. I guess that's it for now on the kickoff for me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Messmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for starting off. You know, I understand why the variance application is coming before us. It's certainly scenarios like this were contemplated during the mission change rulemaking, and when we developed the rules around flaring and venting. And there has been some time between the implementation of those rules and today for operators to be able to come up with gas capture plans that would meet the requirements of the rules. And I'm a little concerned about the quality of the application that's presented here and whether it actually is complete enough to make a determination on whether to approve this or not. In particular is the efforts around good faith effort to comply. There is, you know, in different areas of the application, discussion about how much MCF is available of natural gas per well. And in the director's recommendation or in the application, it indicates that combined, we're looking at 16 MCF, which to me seems like an opportunity for beneficial use on site. And I'm not sure that enough effort has been developed to determine whether that is available to this operator or not. And to me, that's a big decision point as far as whether or not the homework has been done in order to make a determination of whether there's been a good faith effort to comply with the rules. You know, staff certainly in their recommendation has indicated a number of different elements that need to be included as a conditional approval, and that would be, you know, completing a Form 4 that includes the complete inventory of equipment for the location, the document discussing steps taken to find beneficial use of gas from the well, a document describing any governmental permitting for the combustor, a gas capture plan that meets the informational requirements of 903E. 903E does talk about, you know, the volume and content of gas to be flared, the gas analysis that needs to occur. You know, the additional information on the lack of available infrastructure, and, you know, discussions around whether mineral owners will be compensated for the vented or flared gas, and more clarity for the different options for using the gas instead of flaring or venting it. You know, all of those things don't seem to be presented in this application. So it's really difficult for me to make a determination on this, certainly for a 3-year determination on this particular application. I do have some concerns that there are local government regulations that may not allow this to happen. And so I think that also is something that would need to be discussed in a gas capture plan or an evaluation, and should have been ideally part of the application. And, you know, there's discussions about, or there was discussions at the hearing here about different pump jacks that may be available that could utilize natural gas. but no real evidence to determine, why that's not available as an option, because certainly natural gas pump jacks are used in different parts of the state with this amount of natural gas. And so more clarity as to why those would not be an available option, short of them not being economic to purchase at the time. So these are the different things that I'm thinking about. I agree with Commissioner McGowan's thoughts that there needs to be more clarity on whether or not there could be availability of options at some point in the future. Otherwise, a decision on a variance may be a de facto permanent variance if there's really no potential option for beneficial use on site or beneficial use off site for this natural gas. And so these are the things that I'm thinking about right now. It seems perhaps premature to make a determination on this without the necessary information in front of us to make this determination, although certainly there's some contemplation for conditions of approval in there that would give the director the ability to make a determination, but I'm not sure whether that should happen before this commission as a variance request or whether that should be done as conditions of approval. So these are the things I'm thinking about deliberatively. I'm not sure where I'm at.
Other commissioners, Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm in a very similar position to Commissioner Messner. I too would like to see more information. I feel like there's just a lot left to be desired in this application. It sort of reads to me as if they said, well, Willowford Resources got an extension, so we should get an extension too. And I, for one, had that exact concern when we looked at Willowford Resources as well. Certainly for a 3-year process, I understand that there are already efforts being taken to try and change the amount of gas that La Plata can take from local areas like Willowford, like Beeman, and I understand that could change. I don't see that as a reason to give 3 years right away just on that alone. I do appreciate that the conditions of approval suggested by the director in order to make sure that in the interim, this can be handled to at least mitigate some of the impacts. They do have in there that they're going to be using 99% combustion efficient devices. But I'll be honest, I'm very much on the fence as well. I personally would want to see a little bit more information, as Commissioner Messner mentioned here.
Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have much to add. I think I'm definitely in the same boat. All the conditions of approval, the things that the director felt were missing that would be required if we were to approve this as is, seemed significant. Like there wasn't enough maybe effort or work put into the application. And I'm in the same kind of thought as Commissioner Cross, where it felt like, well, we saw another operator do this, so we'll just try the same thing. So similar to other commissioners, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with just a 3-year without some sort of, if we're going to approve this, some sort of check-in in the interim to see where things are and the efforts that are going to be put forth by this operator, and also what's going to happen over at CDPHE. They're going to have some greenhouse gas intensity targets. They're going to have to get permits for the flaring. And I think that we're going to want to keep track of those conversations as well. So I'm not sure I have an answer, but I'm not sure we have enough information I'm not sure enough was put into this application for us to make a really good decision.
All right, commissioners, it seems that we have before us a couple of options. Grant the application possibly for 1 year requiring a check-in, deny the application, or continue this for a period of time to allow the 4 areas in which the application sort of failed to meet the requirements to be added to, so that we're not just kicking it to the director and we're ensuring that when we grant a variance, all the information is before us. Commissioner Messner?
Mr. Chair, I would move to continue this docket to a date in the future and encourage the operator to provide additional information, including all of the information that is requested as per the director's recommendation. And in addition, additional information around the good faith effort to comply, whether or not royalty will be paid on any vented or flared gas, more information on beneficial use on site and what options are available and why options would not be available, a local government disposition on whether this would be allowed. Those are the elements that I think from my standpoint are missing. And so I would move continuance and request that the operator and the applicant provide that information prior to the next hearing.
I would second.
We have a motion and a second. I wonder if the next hearing is May 15th, if all that information can be developed by then, and perhaps we continue it to sometime in June or thereabouts to give the operator a full opportunity to gather that information.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I didn't mean to indicate the next hearing, but the next time we hear this docket. So it's whatever that may be.
AAG Davenport, hearings manager Thomas, should we continue this to a date certain? That's for you, Mr. Davenport. And if so, Mr. Thomas, what's that date certain in your opinion?
Chair, as long as it's okay with hearings manager Thomas for me to go ahead. I think you could do either. You could continue it until the information that you've requested has been submitted, or you could continue it to a date certain. A date certain obviously would give you a deadline.
Yeah,
for
I
the
think a
information
date
to be
certain
submitted.
and a deadline probably makes some sense here. Hearings manager Thomas, got any ideas on a date certain, let's say a month or so out?
I think, Mr. Chair, there would be time in early June. Probably not late June and early July. So I would think if you're going to continue to a date certain, I'd recommend June 5th or 12th, or looking into later in July. Whatever the commission prefers on that front.
It's May 8th, June 12th gives them a little bit more than a month. That seems fine with me. I didn't make the motion. Commissioner Messner, does June 12th work for you?
It does.
And you revise your motion accordingly?
I would revise my motion to include everything I said previously and move to continue it to June 12th.
Commissioner Cross. Motion and a second. Further discussion? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support this motion. I think it's come across in our hesitancy here, but I just want to be very clear that to me, a successful variance application addresses in detail each of the points under Regulation 502 and doesn't simply make a statement that we've reached out to others, but it might detail what those reaching outs look like, what their results were, ideas that were considered and discarded, reasons that those ideas were considered and discarded. I just want to state that I think a successful variance application includes much more detail than was provided in this application. I would also agree that on the conditional approval points that were brought up by the director, that they should be included in an initial application. And so I would encourage the operator to dive relatively deeply into each of these points and have significant discussion rather than one-line responses and short statements.
Agree. Thank you for that. Those final comments on the motion. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Let's take 10 and we'll come back for our last matter and we'll return at 10:22. We are back. This is the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. We have one other matter before us. It is a presentation on the Martinez-Irwin Fund, presentation on flow line safety, research results, upstream pipeline safety, integrity, and detection. I believe we have presenting Mr. Zimmerly and Ms. Smits.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're going to do two separate presentations today. We were requested to describe a little bit of what's happening at METEC. I will do that presentation, and then Kate is going to switch to her computer and run the presentation about the actual project, the pipeline project that we've jointly done here at METEC. So METEC is a facility at Colorado State University, and we are we run a test center that's fairly famous. That's where it's probably the most active and largest leak detection testing facility in the world. We do test stuff there, but we also do a number of other types of more basic research at the facility, including quite a bit of work on pipelines with PHMSA, with the state of Colorado, with operators to provide sort of safety and operational guidance, directed at first responders and also at sort of the whole leak detection and qualification for repair processes. The team here also does field measurements and experiments. We've measured just about every place in the country on just about every sector of the industry right now. From ECMC's perspective, one of the projects we did was to look at orphaned and abandoned wells recently. And so there's been a fair bit of publicity around that study because we found different behaviors from orphaned and abandoned wells than had previously been reported. Not going to go through that today. And then we do quite a bit of work with the mission simulation. I'd like to add that almost everything we do is in conjunction with at least one other university partner. And you'll see that when we get to Kate's presentation later. So the key point of this, or the key request for this particular presentation, though, was to talk about recently awarded funding from the Department of Energy, about $20 million from the Department of Energy with $5 million match, so a $25 million investment in METEC to upgrade the facility and also to diversify and make it more possible to test in other regions and in other types of facilities. So I want to walk through that briefly now. So the first one is we are going to expand and develop METEC. And if you can see the video through Zoom, it's hard to tell whether it's actually coming through or not. The picture you see on the right-hand side there is a panning drone shot of the current test program at METEC that has just finished. So every tripod and every little tower you see there on the ground, that is a sensor from a leak detection solution that is currently testing at METEC, or more properly, they wrapped up last week testing at METEC. And so we had 14 solutions from 10 companies and about 200 sensors set up at METEC for that testing program. This is partially subsidized by the Department of Energy and partly paid for by the companies themselves. And the intention here, everything we're going to talk about is basically to extend that testing capability. So one of the big things that we're trying to do with METEC facility itself is to expand the facility and upgrade it to something that looks more like what facilities look like today. So, and you can see that in the right side picture. You know, you compare that to the left side. When we built METEC in 2016, that was the state of the art of the facilities at the time. That's relatively small by today's standards. And so our plan is to take the south half of this facility and to upgrade that with more equipment and more site complexity to look like facilities that are being built today. As a part of that process, most of our facilities for pipeline testing are embedded in this side of the METEC facility, and we've are in the qualification process with the rest of the university to move those leak detection pipeline test beds for leak detection testing outside of our fence line, where we can run longer and more complex leak detection programs at METEC. And I think this is sort of a unique opportunity when we're moving these to actually reflect the types of research that people need on the pipeline leak detection in the future. And I'm going to let that to Kate, who's going to talk about that in detail in a moment. Okay. The other thing we're doing is satellite and aerial testing. We are going to build a set of rigs that we can move around. But the key point for satellites and for some of the aerial stuff is to have it up for an extended period of time so you can do testing that lasts over months rather than over a couple of weeks. So we're in the process of talking with midstream operators who can host that and can allow us to come in and do that type of testing at their facilities. So, you know, we might put that in one location. We might move it around to a different location over time so we can get different weather conditions, different topological conditions in order to make the testing more realistic. In addition to satellite testing, which is the top priority now because of the launching of new satellites, is we're also looking at other facility types that range from simple to more complex facilities. And a key point here is to be able to configure remotely operated systems that we can move around. So the picture in the bottom right, for example, is a test that we have currently ongoing in the Eagleford region of Texas. And the picture on the top was us installing a similar type of release point on a gas compressor station in Louisiana. We're looking as well at doing this for offshore. So having, we jokingly call it CTEC. So it's METEC at sea. To do controlled releases as well. So a big part of METEC too is that multiple location and that portability to get to different locations. The last big effort that we have in the METEC portfolio is to support gas system decarbonization. The big short-term approach to that is to blend hydrogen with natural gas to reduce the carbon content of the natural gas. So there's a number of different issues around putting hydrogen in pipelines, ranging from how it got in the first place, so how the mixing rigs work and what the emissions are at the point of mixing, what the emission rates will be in infrastructure as it gets transported, and then finally the impact on the end user of that hydrogen mixed into the gas. It's clear that most devices can take a small hydrogen blend pretty easily, both at the residential and commercial side. But as you get higher levels of hydrogen blend, or if there's any degree of sort of separation, it's not injected correctly, it's not clear what the issues will be there. So we are in the early stages of designing METEC 2 to support this type of high blend testing with some support from the Department of Energy. And I'll stop at this point. That gives you kind of an overview of what's in the $25 million investment in METEC 2. And then we can open up to questions, and then after that, Kate will present as well. Thanks.
All right, commissioners, questions for Mr. Zimmerman? Ms. Smits, if you'd like to go ahead and go.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes,
All right, and can you hear me okay as well?
yes, we can.
All right, good. Well, first, thank you to the commissioners for the opportunity to present our research. Like Dan mentioned, this is a project that the CSU's Energy Institute and my research team at Southern Methodist University has been working on for quite a few years now. And we have some interesting results that we wanted to share with you, and then open it up to discussion for opportunities for the way ahead. And so what we're going to do is review the main project findings and then discuss potential ways ahead. And as I go through the findings, if something's more of interest to you and you'd like me to go into it deeper, please feel free to interrupt me at any time, and I'll pass the question to Dan. Just kidding, Dan. and we'll answer your questions. And also, if I'm going too deep into something and you want us to keep moving, then let us know as well, because as academics, we have a tendency to enjoy our science classes. So this project, we call it the UPSIDE project. So it's upstream pipeline safety, inspection, or integrity and detection. So this project was supported by the Martinez Irwin Memorial Public Projects Fund. And we're grateful for that support. And have also taken that support very seriously over the course of the project. So the objectives, the overarching objective is to improve our understanding of the performance of both existing and emerging leak detection methods specific to pipelines. So we're talking about below ground stuff here. And I'll talk about why that's important in a minute. And so our secondary objectives were first to investigate and document what's currently going on with leak detection practices for flow lines, but then also look at the midstream and upstream as well, or the distribution as well, so that we can take lessons learned from distribution, for example, and which ones can and cannot be incorporated in flow lines. The second objective was to characterize leak emissions from below ground pipeline leaks over different soil types, weather, and leak rate conditions. And then third, to deploy and then monitor these leak detection solutions and assess whether or not these solutions work. And so we look at that in a very statistical manner that we call the probability of detection. And so that's the likelihood that we'd actually be able to find the leak under changes in operating conditions as well as environmental conditions, and then develop recommendations for flow line monitoring. And our goal with this is that it can be used by both operators, regulators, and by solution providers as a pathway forward to be able to find the leaks and to fix the leaks. So our focus with this work was a range of leak sizes, from small leaks all the way up to rather large leaks, and different gas compositions. The reason we were interested in gas compositions is because when we're looking at upstream versus midstream versus downstream, the composition changes. And from a heavier gas to a lighter gas, depending on what is mixed with the predominant molecule in the natural gas, which is the methane. And so we have some interesting results from that. And then the focus is on flow lines and gathering lines. So looking at from the well to the well pad, as well as to the compressor station. And then the last point there, the above ground link detection technologies linked with the below the surface and the atmospheric understanding. One thing that we can do at the METEC test facility that's very unique is we know the size of our leak below ground, so we can control that from a really small leak size, so that you'd see more in a distribution grade leak, to rather large leaks that are upwards of 400 standard cubic feet per hour. So we can do small stuff and we can do big stuff. We can control that, and then we're able to monitor the gas transport below ground, how that then manifests itself on the surface as this diffuse presentation, and then what happens to it once it gets into the atmosphere. So I think we're the only folks doing that entire profile of having that below ground understanding, the surface understanding, and then the atmospheric understanding. And the reason this is important is because the leak detection and quantification solutions that have been developed for above ground leaks many times they do not translate directly to underground natural gas flow line and gathering line leaks. And if there's nothing else you take away from my presentation today, I think that that's one of the key points, that these leak detection solutions that were developed for above ground leaks do not directly translate to a below ground leaks. And we have the data to show that in part. And that's due to the diffuse presentation of the subsurface leak relative to the above ground equipment or an above ground leak source. It's due to, as this figure shows, the complex below ground transport behavior of the gas, as well as that soil air interaction process of the below ground leak reaching the above ground air. It's due to the extended geometry that we have of pipeline systems. These are not point sources. These pipelines are everywhere. And then finally, due to operator practice. And so we don't have a very good understanding of what our minimum detection limits are of our sensors, or a very good defined survey protocol. And one thing we really focused on with this project was trying to define both of those things better, that detection limit as well as that survey protocol. So this is just very briefly showing our schedule. We actually started in October of 2020 on this project and the various steps, and the project will be ending in this September timeframe. And our upside project, one of the great things about it is it was funded the same time as a parallel project that was funded by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Association by PHMSA. And so that project was looking at a different scope of work. It was looking at how far and how fast gas can move underneath the ground, and how we can incorporate that understanding into both operator practice and first responder protocols. But we were able to leverage a lot of the experimental capabilities and work that was going on with that project, as well as this parallel upside project, to serve as a force multiplier. And so as a result, it ended up being a lot of technology transfer opportunities and a lot of project deliverables. So for this project, we've published 12 peer-reviewed papers in which the ECMC and the funding has been acknowledged. We have 5 public peer-reviewed data, published data sets in different media articles, and then lots of conference presentations. And one of the things we've really been trying to balance with our research groups is presenting to all of our stakeholders, or to the best of our abilities. So that includes industry, first responders. We've given discussions, talks to safety groups through PHMSA, and the Pipeline Research Council International invited talks. And last week, I was out at the American Gas Association giving a talk on some of our research results, as well as our academic conferences. But I just wanted to stress that, because a lot of academics just have a tendency to stay in our little academic circles. And then other technology transfer opportunities as well. And so when we publish our work, we also make it available to all people. So we publish it open access, so that anybody can download these peer-reviewed publications. And so you should have a copy of this presentation. You can just click on the hyperlinks and get those. The other thing that we found is very helpful to operators and the first responders, as well as the technology solution developers, is we've been publishing what we call these METEC research alerts. So when we have interesting findings from our experimentation, or in some cases from our statistical analysis or our mathematical modeling that we do, we try to publish them on the METEC website, as well as send it out to our networks, so that they can have that information as soon as possible, as opposed to waiting for the silly peer-reviewed paper to come out eons later. So with this project, our approach was twofold. So first was to use experiments and then data analytics and some numerical modeling to first investigate this multi-dimensional behavior of the natural gas. within the subsurface, and then most importantly, how it behaves after it enters the atmosphere. And then to study the effects of the environmental conditions, the leak properties, and the survey methods on the efficiency of the leak detection behavior. So I already mentioned that parallel PHMSA project that was looking at the speed and extent of the below ground gas behavior. And so to get more into our approach with this work, we looked at different gas compositions that ranged from heavy gas that we would see in either, for example, the Permian Basin or the DJ Basin here in Colorado, to a lighter gas, which we would see after the city gate. So for a distribution grade gas. Our leak rates ranged from a very small leak to a 20 plus skiff. We actually went up to about 400 skiff with our leak rates, and then different depths. So depending on the pipeline location, they're usually at different depths, ranging anywhere from 2 feet below the ground up to about 6 feet. And then we looked at different, as a result of all these differences in the leak characteristics, this resulted in different area sources of our leak. And then we looked at different weather conditions, different terrain and surface conditions, and a couple of different soil conditions with our work. And so the first part was to characterize the gas plume that I'm going to talk about, is characterizing the gas plume after it enters into the atmosphere. So if you can imagine, if you look at this figure over here, we have some sort of below ground leak. And after the gas emits from the surface, depending on the weather conditions, we're going to get different behaviors of our gas plume in the atmosphere. And so what our research showed, because of this project, was that was predominantly due to the atmospheric stability. So atmospheric stability, this describes how the gas is dispersed in the atmosphere based on a combined effect of wind speed, cloud cover, and temperature differences between the atmosphere and the ground surface. So when we have, as this figure shows, an unstable environment, this typically occurs when we have a low cloud cover, which results in a high solar radiation that heats the ground, and it results in a more vertical transfer of our gas from the surface to the air. Where when we have a stable condition, which is this bottom figure right here, this is usually characterized by a high cloud cover condition where we have more minimal ground heating, and this results in more horizontal transport of our gas. So if you can imagine being a leak detection solution, whether that be someone walking across this pipeline or driving or using a UAV or flying, that the probability of the detection of a leak is going to be impacted greatly by that combined effect that we call atmospheric stability. So that's that combined effect of not just the wind speed, but also the cloud cover, which is creating that temperature difference between the surface and the air, and then resulting in either the gas wanting to move in a vertical direction or a horizontal direction. And all of these things are not currently included in solution providers' analysis at all when they claim they can detect certain sizes of leaks, and they're not included in operator practice. So to get a little bit more into to what we did and how we went through some of this, the main different survey solutions that we looked at for this project were walking, driving, and simulated UAV survey. And so we did 30 plus experiments, so depending on how you look at them and put them together. And we looked at different conditions, as you can read there, with these surveys. And so we came up with a protocol, so a standard testing protocol that we did time and time again for each condition. And so if you can imagine, one of the beauties of being at a university is having a lot of graduate students and undergrad students who need a job, right? That are able to take a lot of data and do that in a systematic way so that we can develop our understanding of our detection probability. And so this is just giving you a schematic of the survey routes and an example. If we had some sort of pipeline and we're driving, walking, flying over this pipeline in a very simulated way, And then we're measuring the concentration using a standard protocol, and then changing one thing at a time. And so sometimes that's changing the driving speed, changing the height above the ground, changing the distance off of the right of way, because in a lot of upstream scenarios, we can't go right over the pipeline, or in many cases, the operators don't even know where the pipeline is located. And then from a leak perspective and from a weather perspective, we're doing this very systematically of changing the leak rate from a low leak rate to a high leak rate, changing the weather conditions. So walking this route or driving or flying a UAV over this route in the morning, at noon, at night, and then taking that data and pulling all of that into an understanding of this probability or this likelihood of detection, which is just the ratio of the detected passes to the total number of passes. So I'm going to go through just a couple of our findings, and then we can talk about just different potential way ahead. So the first one are leak detection methods that have been developed and used for above ground leaks. They don't directly translate to those below ground and gathering line leaks. I already mentioned it for the various scenario, the various reasons here. But the one thing that I wanted to show was some profiles of what's going on below ground and what that looks like on the surface, because I don't think people think about this enough. So this is showing a vertical profile as well as a plan view at 4 different depths below the ground. And so we have a sensor system that we've developed that we can put in the soil and take the gas concentrations when we run these experiments at 1 second intervals over the course of the experiment. So this is just showing you a time at one point in time. And so as you can see, as methane is a light gas compared to air, it has the tendency to preferentially move upwards due to buoyancy. However, you also get this lateral and also this downward movement that occurs due to the diffusion profile. So it ends up with this bulb shape of the gas, where you have, if you visualize it, you have this narrower plume width at the surface compared to the wider profile at a deeper location. And so this is for a 20 skiff leak, which is a relatively large leak if you're talking to a distribution person. If you're talking to an upstream person, it's probably not as big. But you can see at the surface what the surface presentation of the leak looks like, but compared to 4 inches below the ground, a foot below the ground, and 3 feet below the ground. So what is detected at the surface using some sort of CGI is not representative of what is present below ground, where we're seeing these plume radius at a leak depth, for this case, about 4 times that of the surface radius. When we start adding complexity, so this is just a wet soil surface. We have a good relationship with the fire department, the Clear Fire Department, who comes out and lets it rain on our test bed on occasion. And so we can see how those profiles change when we have some sort of wet soil after a heavy rainfall event, which really obscures the ability to see the gas at the surface using CGI. And the plume radius increasing in this case because of the lack of ability of the gas to transport vertically, about 16 times that of the surface radius. And so we did this below ground for a whole variety of conditions. So what you're looking at here is just a grass condition that you would see in a flow line, all the way to more complexity. So winter time, we have a lot of snow out here, and how that changes the below ground plume. So as that below ground plume changes, as you can see in these figures, it's also changing the surface presentation of the leak, and hence the exchange between the subsurface and the atmosphere. And so when we look at big and small leaks at the surface, they can look different or they can look the same depending on the time of day or the weather conditions. And so what this is plotting here is for a small leak and a big leak over time, just plotting the surface concentration and this rise and fall of the surface concentration over a couple of days, but then also over nighttime and daytime. And so during the daytime, what we see is these concentration enhancements we see the concentration enhancements at the nighttime compared to the daytime. And so we get these much higher concentrations on the surface at night than we do during the day. And it doesn't, that's irregardless of the size of the leak. And so the other thing that we see is if we're just relying on concentrations, these big leaks during some points in the day look exactly like the small leaks if we're just relying on measuring a surface concentration. And so the reason we're seeing these smaller concentrations during the day is because we have these rising surface temperatures and we also have this increase in wind speed, so that decreases the atmospheric resistance and the ability of the gas to move into the air. And then this higher dispersion as a result. And so we see this consistent behavior with our gas that then translates into what we're seeing in the atmosphere. And we see this across all of our data sets. So our second finding, that first one being that below ground leaks don't look like above ground leaks. The next one is the effectiveness of any leak survey method is highly dependent on the above ground plume behavior. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of small items here. With our research, we found that there's three main factors that are affecting the above ground plume development. And so the first one is the atmospheric stability. And what you're looking at here is the plan view of an above ground plume. So we have lots of sensors downwind of a leak that's coming out of the ground, and then we're plopping that all into one or two figures here. And so the first row is for an unstable leak, and the second one is during a stable atmospheric condition. So that's just saying the atmospheric condition. And what we can see is that it has a very big effect on the concentrations as well as the shape of the plume. The second thing that we're able to see in our data is that gas component. So when we have a wet gas versus a dry gas. So the green box is a distribution grade gas, where the blue box is a gas that we would typically see in the DJ Basin. And so we can see the differences in those plumes. And then finally, and this is something that we've been trying to communicate more with operators, the leak rate has a lesser effect on the plume shape and size than the gas composition and the atmospheric stability. And so the first thing folks normally go to with, okay, well, are we getting a gas plume that we can detect, is they're interested in, well, it has a lot to do with the leak rate. Okay, not so much in terms of the shape as we're showing here, or the size. And then the other thing being the wind condition. But what we're really trying to show is it's not just wind, it's the stability, which is this combined effect. And the gas composition also has a really big effect and needs to be taken into leak detection practices that we have. This is just showing one more example of taking our data and just showing it over time of what an above ground plume behavior looks like for the exact same leak as time progresses. And you can see how sometimes it's highly visible and sometimes it's almost not visible at all. Our third, and I'm going to skip over this because I've already talked about it mostly, is incorporating that knowledge of the atmospheric stability. It improves the efficacy of our mobile survey methods. So I've already gone through stability with you and won't give you a quiz at the end, I promise. So the first one, when we look at the impact of atmospheric stability on the maximum survey speed, we see some interesting behavior. So this figure is showing the vertical profile of the maximum effective survey speed along with downwind distance. And so if we're trying to look at what the plume looks like and then match that with our survey solution. So for example, if we're a UAV and we know we're going to fly at different heights, what we're able to show is the sweet spot is going to vary depending on your weather conditions of the day. And so we put that holistically into some charts that an operator would be able to use. And that it's also a function, as you can see, of your max survey speed. So your maximum survey speed is going to vary depending on the height above the ground and the downwind distance. So this would be the distance from the leak point, or in many cases that's seen as the distance from the pipeline right away, and how we can look at it. But in general, as you can see in this data, for the same stability, the maximum survey speed is significantly impacted, but then the max survey speed decreases with an increase in our stability. And so we've also been able to show that for the impact of survey height and the impact of downwind distance, and have these charts that we can incorporate into the survey solution. So as you can see with this little cartoon figure here. The last finding I wanted to share with you, and we have lots more if anyone's ever interested in going into these deeper, is that this probability of leak detection, and we looked at walking, driving, and aerial survey for our work, so simulated UAV, it's highly impacted by the survey and the wind speed. And what we were able to do, and this is just one example, is put together some charts that plot the wind speed and the potential survey speed, and then understand what that detection probability would be for a certain size leak. And so operators or solution providers can potentially look at these and try to say, if I'm trying to achieve a certain detection probability at a certain speed, what am I going to get? And how can I incorporate that into my practice? The other way this is used is, I say, raising the BS flag of what is it that we're actually able to see? Because from my discussions with a lot of solution providers, is that they're promising seeing things that I don't think the data is showing they're actually able to see for, and I'm specifically talking for below ground leaks, because that's my area of interest and expertise. And this is again just showing some of the work that we did with that. I mentioned gas composition and looking at detection probability, and just wanted to show one chart of this, of how the probability of detection is being affected by the density increases. So if we have the red lines are for the Permian Basin compared to a distribution grade leak for the exact same scenario and exact same emission situation, and how that impacts our detection probability quite significantly. Some of this that, when we're looking at weather conditions, or I don't think so much with the gas composition, because when I talk to folks, or Dan or I talk to folks, I don't think they really consider that. But with the weather conditions, many times people know that intuitively. What we've been able to do is put a value on it and actually show how much the probability of detection is being impacted based on both operational decisions and various weather conditions. One last thing, and then I'll talk about different ways ahead, that I also think is of interest is what operators call a detection threshold. And so the detection threshold is if we have an instrument that we're using, and then when we say, yes, we have the potential for a leak. So what is that indication value? And so we know that about 2 ppm is background. And then anything above that with our instruments, we keep track of, because we use PPB, because we're scientist level instrumentation in order to take our data. However, in the field, that threshold value is then defined as, okay, is there a leak or is there not, or should I go and do additional investigation? And what this is really showing is how important the definition of that value is to achieve certain detection probability for below ground leaks. And so this is plotting on the top a small leak versus the bottom, a larger leak when we performed both driving survey and UAV survey, and the impacts of that threshold value decision. So this is just a summary of our key results, which I won't go through with you again, because we already talked about all of these. Again, for that main takeaway, the leak detection methods that are developed and used for above ground leaks, they don't directly transfer for below ground leaks. And then that's very important to consider. So when we're looking at potential next steps, and Dan, feel free to jump in with these different next steps. We have quite a few ideas. We've listed 4 of them here on where to go from here with our work. So we've been able to look at that detection probability and how it's impacted by a variety of conditions, but we haven't looked at a lot of diverse conditions that we're able to that are seen in that up and midstream environment, to include a lot more variations in climate, rugged terrain, complex environments. So that would be one of the main ones. The second one, we've been able to develop a model that we can use to incorporate the understanding of these different weather conditions into leak detection success, but we haven't done it in a holistic way. So that would be another avenue that we'd be interested in pursuing. The third one is looking at risk-based assessment and how we can take this understanding and move it into a more risk-based assessment from both the safety perspective as well as from an environmental perspective. And then the final one, which I think we're very good at with the pipeline testbed METEC facility, is that independent validation of methods. So I have a few slides in here that go through each one of them, but I think at this point I'll open it up for discussion, or see if Dan, if you have any additional items you want to add to this.
So envisioning that ECMC may contemplate some survey requirement, particularly for gathering lines and flow lines. Our observation has been that there's been a fair bit of work. We've done a fair bit of work on how to do that, but the precision of basically saying this is an effective model, or to relate what that survey or inspection process is back to what you can expect to detect. Okay, there's a bit of work that should be done there. And you can see kind of laced throughout all 4 of the items that Kate mentioned. There's also sort of a practicality testing that should be done. We've done some work in conjunction with a number of the operators in this space, and they've been part of our advisory boards as well. But sort of tuning the methods for what's practical in the field. And then you always have resource limitations on how much you can do. So that assessment of where to deploy and how to deploy effectively, what weather conditions does it work in, what terrain conditions it works in. All of those are things that we're like close to that guidance, but not quite there at this point in time.
All right. Quite a bit of information. Thank you very, very much. Do commissioners have questions for the panel? Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I have a question, but if I were to give an elevator speech about what we found here, right? If we're regulators and we're trying to figure out if there are gas leaks from pipelines, we would want to survey at night under low wind conditions, moving very slowly with our survey instrument to have the highest probability of finding a leak.
You might not have to be at night, but you do need to be cognizant of where you are relative to the pipeline and your height above ground, your distance from the pipeline, how well you know where that pipeline actually is. And you definitely couldn't do it yesterday with the wind blowing at 50 miles per hour, right?
Right.
And so, and I think that there's part of the issue that we're seeing with methods that are being used is there's a little bit of confirmation bias in their approach, right? So because they have done some inspections of pipeline and they have found something, there's an assumption that they're finding everything, or they're finding a certain threshold of everything. And that's the part that when we test, we don't see that, right? So we actually see quite a bit of variability. Even though you do detect, you don't know how often you detect, right? And so it's different instruments are good at different times of the day, flying at different altitudes or driving at different altitudes. So it's kind of tuning your weather conditions to your pipeline type, to your knowledge of the locations. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
We're in the same room, but we're
Yeah.
on different screens, sorry.
Other questions, comments? Well, seeing none, you did a great job of articulating your points for us. We really appreciate your being with us and the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And thank you again to the commissioners for the opportunity to present our work and for your support of our work.
All right. Commissioners, I believe that has finished up the business on our agenda. With nothing else to undertake, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. See you next week, folks. Thanks.